When the aliens first arrived, humanity was in a state of disbelief. For years, humans had lived peacefully, focusing on rebuilding their world and expanding their knowledge. They had no idea that a time would come when they would face an invasion from outer space. The alien fleet descended from the stars, its ships a terrifying sight in the sky. Their ships were massive, dark, and gleaming with advanced technology. The people of Earth watched in horror as the alien ships hovered over major cities. Panic spread quickly. The world had never faced anything like this before. The aliens made their intentions clear almost immediately. They didn't come in peace. Their leader, a tall, silver-skinned creature, broadcasted a message to the entire planet. "We are the Zorans," the voice echoed in every language. "Your planet has been chosen for conquest. Surrender now, and we will allow you to live as our slaves. Resist, and your species will be wiped out." Humans had no idea how to respond. The military was weak, disorganized, and unprepared for such an invasion. It seemed hopeless. But what the aliens didn't know was that Earth had something they didn't expect. Something buried in their history. In a small, secretive military base located deep in the mountains, a group of human Marines were called to action. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were veterans, survivors of countless wars, and some of the most skilled combatants the world had ever seen. They had been trained for everything except the unimaginable, an alien invasion. Captain Sam Carter, the leader of the squad, was a man who had faced impossible odds before. He wasn't afraid of the aliens or their technology. He knew war. He knew what it took to win, and he knew that sometimes, to survive, a person had to break the rules. "This isn't a battle for survival," Carter said, staring at the alien ships through a pair of binoculars. "This is a war, and we fight dirty." The other Marines nodded in agreement. They were prepared to do whatever it took to protect their planet. But the humans had one advantage the Zorans didn't know about: their history of war crimes. The Marines' first plan of action was simple: hit hard, fast, and without mercy. They didn't have the advanced weapons the aliens possessed, but they had something far more valuable: experience. They knew how to make every attack count, using every weapon at their disposal, and they weren't afraid to use methods considered unsporting by galactic standards. The first attack was a surprise. The Marines infiltrated a Zoran outpost in the dead of night, using the terrain to their advantage. The aliens had no idea what hit them. Human tactics were brutal, designed to strike fear into their enemies. Explosives took out critical power sources, blinding the aliens before they could react. The Marines moved quickly, leaving the Zorans in chaos. "What the hell was that?" one of the alien commanders shouted. His species had never faced anything like this before. The Zorans prided themselves on their superior technology and intelligence. But the humans were different. They didn't fight fair. They fought to win, no matter the cost. For days, the Zorans underestimated the humans. They thought they were dealing with an inferior species. They saw humans as primitive, harmless creatures who had no concept of warfare. But every time the Marines struck, they left a trail of destruction. The Zorans began to question their understanding of humanity. How are they doing this? One of the Zoran generals asked, looking at the reports coming in. "Their tactics. They're not like anything we've seen. They're using strategies that should be impossible." As the days turned into weeks, the battle grew fiercer. The Marines didn't just defend Earth, they attacked with a purpose. Every strike was calculated, ruthless, and precise. They used traps, psychological warfare, and guerrilla tactics that left the Zorans reeling. The aliens had thought their technology would give them an easy victory. They were wrong. Meanwhile, back on Earth, people were beginning to notice a change. The world's governments, initially paralyzed by fear, had started to rally behind the Marines. News reports showed the humans pushing back the alien invaders. Every victory was met with disbelief and awe. Humanity had become something more than the peaceful species they had once been. As the war continued, the Zorans began to panic. The longer they stayed on Earth, the more they realized that they had awakened a sleeping giant. They had underestimated the humans' capacity for war. They hadn't expected that the soldiers on Earth would have the knowledge and skills to fight like this. The final confrontation came when the Zoran fleet launched an all-out assault on Earth's last defense, a massive, heavily fortified base in the heart of Europe. The Marines had set a trap. Using the Zoran's overconfidence against them, they lured the fleet into a series of ambushes. Explosions lit up the sky, and the Zoran ships began to fall one by one. The tide had turned. In the final moments of the battle, Captain Carter stood at the command center, looking out at the burning sky. "We didn't just fight for survival," he said, a grim smile on his face. "We fought to show them what humanity is capable of." The Zorans had no choice but to retreat. Earth had proven to be a force they couldn't conquer, and they had learned the hard way that humanity was far from harmless. As the last of the alien ships disappeared into the distance, the Marines stood tall. They were the unexpected heroes, warriors who had risen from a peaceful world to defend it, no matter the cost. And in the end, they had shown the universe just how dangerous humanity could be when pushed to the edge. When the Zorans first appeared in the sky, humanity had no idea how to react. Their ships were enormous, casting shadows over entire cities, and their technology far surpassed anything humans had ever seen. People across the world panicked. The Zorans communicated their message loudly and clearly, warning humanity to surrender or face extinction. "We are the Zorans," the message echoed in every language. "You are weak. Your planet is ours to claim. Resist, and you will be destroyed." Humanity was unprepared. The military was in disarray, and the world's leaders scrambled to make a decision. The thought of fighting these advanced beings seemed impossible. But there was one thing the Zorans didn't know, something hidden deep within the human history. In a quiet, undisclosed location beneath the mountains, a small group of military personnel were investigating something far more dangerous than anyone expected. A small, worn book had been found in a secret government archive, untouched for centuries. The book, titled The Art of War Human Edition, had been written by the survivors of an ancient war that humanity had fought against a now-forgotten alien race. It contained the most ruthless, efficient strategies for warfare known to humankind, strategies that could turn the tide of any conflict. Captain Elisa Grant was the first to lay eyes on the book. She had seen many battles in her time, but nothing had prepared her for the kind of war the Zorans were about to bring. The Zorans thought they could easily conquer Earth, but Elisa knew better. She had read enough military history to recognize the dark power contained within the book's pages. The book was filled with brutal tactics, each one designed to break an enemy's spirit before their body. It taught how to make the enemy fear you more than the fight itself. It was written in a language that only a few humans had mastered, a language of war that felt almost forbidden. It was not just a guide to combat, it was a manual for winning at any cost. "This is our only chance," Captain Grant said, holding the book in her hands as the team gathered around. "If we use these tactics, we may stand a chance, but it's not going to be easy. The Zorans won't play fair, and neither will we." The team, consisting of soldiers and strategists, understood the gravity of the decision. They would use the book's knowledge, but at what cost? These were the tactics of ancient warriors, of human beings who had survived by turning their enemies' strengths into weaknesses. The Zorans might have superior technology, but they didn't understand the depths of human cunning. The Zorans launched their first wave of attacks on Earth. The humans prepared for battle. The Zoran ships fired lasers from above, targeting cities, military bases, and any signs of resistance. People on the ground ran for cover, but Elisa and her team were already in position. The battle began quickly, but what the Zorans didn't expect was how fast and brutal the human response was. The first strike came from underground. The Zorans had assumed that Earth's military was weak, but they had no idea about the ancient human techniques hidden in the book. Elisa's team had set traps along the streets, using explosives that could disable Zoran technology. As the aliens advanced, their vehicles were destroyed one by one, their communication systems jammed. The Zorans quickly found themselves surrounded, unable to keep up with the guerrilla tactics humans had learned from the book. "How are they doing this?" one Zoran commander asked, his voice filled with disbelief. He had never encountered an enemy that fought so ruthlessly, using methods that seemed to defy logic. The Zorans were used to overwhelming their enemies with sheer power, but this time, they were the ones being outsmarted. As the battle raged on, the Zorans began to retreat, unsure of how to respond to the unpredictable tactics. Captain Grant, however, knew this was just the beginning. The book contained something more, something even darker. A strategy that would end the war once and for all, but it would require the ultimate sacrifice. The Zorans, realizing their initial victory was slipping away, launched a final desperate assault. They sent everything they had, attacking the heart of the human resistance. The humans had been fighting for days, but their resources were running low. Elisa knew that the only way to turn the battle was to use the last tactic from the book, a psychological weapon designed to break the enemy's spirit. Elisa and her team prepared to set the trap. They targeted the Zoran fleet's main base, using an old abandoned military bunker as a decoy. Once the Zoran forces arrived, they would trigger a series of explosions that would not only destroy their ships, but create a massive cloud of dust and debris, blocking their vision and creating chaos among their ranks. The Zorans took the bait. Their ships descended into the trap, unaware of what was waiting for them. As the explosions went off, the sky turned dark. The Zoran fleet was in chaos. Communication lines were cut, and their ships were destroyed, one by one. The humans had won, but the cost had been high. As the dust settled and the Zorans fled, Captain Grant stood alone on the battlefield, holding the book in her hands. It had saved Earth, but she knew that the secrets it contained could never be shared with anyone again. Some knowledge was too dangerous to release to the world. "We did it," Elisa whispered, looking out over the wreckage. The Zorans were gone for now, but the humans knew the battle had only just begun. There would always be other threats, and humanity would always be ready to fight. But for now, Earth was safe. And the Book of War had proven that even the most unexpected species could become a force that no one should ever underestimate. The day the Zorans arrived, Earth was unprepared. Their ships were vast, sleek, and terrifying. They hovered over the cities, sending shockwaves through every nation. Their message was clear: Earth would fall. No resistance would be tolerated. The Zorans had come to conquer, and humanity had no way to fight back. The people of Earth were terrified. The world's governments were paralyzed, and military forces scrambled to find some kind of answer. But it seemed hopeless. The Zorans were technologically superior in every way, and no nation on Earth had the means to stop them. But there was something the Zorans did not know. Something hidden away in the deepest, most secret corners of Earth's military. Something that had been kept from the public for years. Deep within a hidden base, far away from the chaos, a small team of elite Marines prepared for war. These Marines were no ordinary soldiers. They had been trained in tactics and techniques so secret, so dangerous, that even other military forces were unaware of their existence. The Marines knew things that no one else on Earth had ever been taught, things that could turn the tide of any war. And they were ready to use them. Captain Daniel Hayes, the leader of the team, stood in front of his soldiers. His face was serious, his eyes sharp. "We've been waiting for this day," he said, his voice low but firm. "We knew they'd come eventually. And now we fight." The other Marines, all veterans of countless battles, nodded. They had heard the stories. They had seen the training. But none of them knew what to expect from an enemy like the Zorans. "What's our plan, Captain?" Sergeant Maya Ortiz asked, her voice full of determination. "To win," Hayes replied simply. "And we'll do whatever it takes. Don't worry about the rules. The Zorans think they can conquer us because they think we fight by rules. But they're wrong. We fight to win." The Marines had a secret. It was something they had never shared with anyone, not even their own commanders. Over the years, they had trained in forbidden methods that would be considered war crimes by any other military. They had learned how to break an enemy's spirit, how to turn the very act of war into something so brutal that no one could stand against it. The Zorans might have the technology, but the Marines had the will, and they knew how to use it. The first time they encountered the Zorans, the aliens were confident. Their weapons were powerful, their ships indestructible. The Zorans attacked without hesitation, thinking that humanity would crumble before their might. But they had never faced an enemy like this. As the Zoran forces landed in a major city, the Marines moved into position. They had studied the Zoran tactics carefully, looking for weaknesses. They knew that the Zoran's superiority in technology made them arrogant. They didn't expect humanity to fight back, not with such intensity. The Marines hit hard and fast. They used everything at their disposal: explosives, hidden traps, and psychological warfare. They didn't care about the rules of engagement. They destroyed the Zoran communications towers, cutting off their ability to coordinate. They used guerrilla tactics, attacking at night and disappearing into the shadows. The Zorans, caught off guard by the sudden ferocity of the humans, began to panic. "What are they doing?" a Zoran commander shouted, his voice filled with confusion. "These humans, they're not fighting like anyone we've ever faced." The Zorans had underestimated humanity. They believed that humans, with their limited technology, could not possibly stand up to an advanced species. But the Marines knew something the Zorans did not. When pushed to the edge, humans became a force like no other. The more the Zorans attacked, the more the Marines retaliated, always staying one step ahead. Every battle was a new opportunity to show the aliens just how wrong they were. As the conflict escalated, the Marines' tactics grew even more ruthless. They planted false intelligence, tricking the Zorans into making fatal mistakes. They staged ambushes, drawing the aliens into traps where they could be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The Zorans quickly realized that their technology was no match for human ingenuity. One night, the Zorans launched a large-scale offensive, hoping to crush the remaining resistance. Their fleet arrived in the skies above the city, ready to annihilate the humans. But the Marines were already in position, waiting for the perfect moment. Captain Hayes gave the signal, and the Marines unleashed their final tactic, a psychological strike. They used the Zorans' own communication channels to broadcast messages, filled with disturbing images and sounds. The messages were designed to break the Zorans' morale, to make them doubt their mission. The aliens had never faced anything like this before. They were not prepared for the kind of psychological warfare humans were capable of. The Zorans hesitated. For the first time since their arrival, they questioned whether the invasion was worth it. And that was all the Marines needed. They launched their final assault, taking down the Zoran ships one by one. It was over. The last Zoran ship retreated into space. Captain Hayes stood with his team, looking at the wreckage of the battlefield. The victory had come at a heavy cost, but they had won. They had done what no one else thought possible. "We did it," Sergeant Ortiz said quietly. "We showed them what humans are really capable of." Hayes nodded, but his expression remained serious. "The Zorans are gone for now. But we know the truth. We've been hiding our secret for too long. The galaxy will never look at us the same again." The Marines knew that they had changed the course of history. They had used tactics that no one else could have imagined. And in doing so, they had proven that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. The secret of the Marines was no longer a secret. But for now, the war was over. Earth had survived. And the Zorans had learned that the humans they thought were helpless were anything but. It had been years since humanity had faced a real threat. For decades, Earth had been at peace, growing, developing, and reaching new heights. The wars of the past were just stories now, faded memories. No one thought about the old conflicts anymore. They were forgotten, buried beneath the weight of time. But something was stirring. The sky darkened one morning with a fleet of alien ships that seemed to come from nowhere. The Zorans. They had come to Earth without warning, their ships like dark shadows against the blue. No one knew where they had come from or why they had arrived. But they were here now, and their message was clear: Earth was to surrender or face destruction. The world was shocked, unprepared. Nations scrambled to put together a defense. Scientists, military leaders, and civilians watched in fear as the Zoran ships hovered ominously in the sky. The Zorans' technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Their weapons could level entire cities with a single blast. For days, humanity waited, unsure of what to do. Governments called emergency meetings. Armies prepared for battle, but no one knew how to fight back against an enemy so powerful. Then, something unexpected happened. Deep within a government facility, a group of scientists and historians uncovered a long-forgotten record. It was an old, dusty file that had been hidden away for centuries, marked with a single, chilling title, "The War We Forgot." It was a war fought in the distant past, long before the Zorans had ever appeared. A war between humans and an alien species so powerful that they nearly wiped out humanity. Yet, despite their advanced technology, the aliens had been defeated. The file contained information about the tactics, strategies, and technologies that had been used to win that war. It was a history buried so deep that no one even remembered it existed. Dr. Emily Carter, a leading historian in the government's secret research department, was the first to see the file. As she flipped through the ancient records, she realized something terrifying. The war they had forgotten had been fought using methods so extreme, so brutal, that they were now considered forbidden. And the most unsettling part? The aliens they had defeated all those years ago, the ones who nearly destroyed humanity, were not unlike the Zorans in many ways. "How did we forget this?" Emily muttered, her voice shaking with disbelief. She turned to her colleague, Dr. Simon Reed. "This is the key. The Zorans. They're just like them." Simon leaned over, his face pale as he read the document. "If we're right, then the tactics we used in that war might still work against them. But can we really use them again?" The cost was unimaginable. Emily swallowed hard. She knew what he meant. The methods used to defeat the alien invaders had been so ruthless that they had nearly wiped out both sides. The victory had come at a terrible price, and the consequences of using those strategies had been too much for humanity to bear. After the war, all knowledge of it was erased from public record, locked away to ensure no one would ever repeat it. But now, the Zorans had returned, and Earth had no choice but to fight. Captain Marcus Wells, a veteran of many battles, was called to lead the operation. He was briefed on the situation and, like the others, stunned by the discovery. But he was also a soldier, and soldiers didn't hesitate when the world was at stake. "We fight to survive," he said, his voice firm as he looked at his team of elite soldiers. "Whatever it takes." The humans quickly mobilized. The strategies outlined in the ancient file were brought back to life. The first tactic they used was psychological warfare. They broadcast messages across the skies using Zoran communication frequencies. These messages weren't just threats, they were designed to shake the very foundation of the Zoran mind, filled with images and sounds that were meant to disorient and confuse. It worked. But that was only the beginning. Next came the guerrilla tactics attacks in the dark, hitting where the Zorans least expected it. They had superior technology, but humans had the element of surprise and the knowledge of their enemies' weaknesses. The Marines fought without mercy, targeting the heart of Zoran forces. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Zorans had underestimated humanity. They were used to conquering worlds by overwhelming their enemies with power. But humans had something the Zorans couldn't predict. Captain Wells and his team launched their final attack, a coordinated strike on the Zoran command ship, located in the heart of the fleet. The operation was risky, but they had no other choice. It was either victory or death. The Zoran ship was heavily guarded, but the humans knew the old war strategies like the back of their hands. They had learned from the past. They used every trick they had, hacking Zoran systems, planting false information, and setting traps in the Zorans' path. The final push was a brutal, no-holds-barred assault. The Zoran ship, unable to respond quickly enough, was finally taken down. As the dust settled, the Zoran fleet retreated, leaving Earth behind. The humans had won against all odds. Captain Wells stood on the battlefield, looking out over the wreckage. "We did it," he whispered, but there was no joy in his voice. They had won, but at a cost that would never be fully understood. The war they had fought and won was one that would never be remembered. It would remain locked away, buried in history, as a lesson humanity had hoped to forget. But the Zorans were gone, for now. The Earth had survived, and the secret of the forgotten war remained hidden, as it always had been. The cost of victory had been too high, and humanity had paid a price no one should ever have to pay again. The world had already fallen, Cities lay in ruins, and entire nations were swallowed up by the overwhelming might of the alien invaders. The Zorans, an advanced race with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever seen, had come to Earth with one goal: total annihilation. Earth's defenses were shattered. The military, once proud and powerful, had been decimated. Every attempt to stop the Zorans failed. The invaders didn't just defeat Earth's armies, they destroyed the very will to fight. Humanity was on the brink of extinction, with only scattered groups of survivors left in hiding. Among those survivors was Commander Sarah Knight, a hardened military leader who had seen the destruction firsthand. She was part of a small group of soldiers who had managed to survive in a remote underground base. They had no more resources, no backup, and no hope. But Sarah refused to give in. She knew the Zorans would never stop until every last human was wiped out. And if humanity was going to go down, they would go down fighting. "I won't let them win," she muttered to herself as she stared at the holographic map of Earth. The map was a haunting sight, filled with red marks indicating the Zoran-controlled zones. The Earth was a shell of what it once was, but Sarah's resolve remained unshaken. "We need to strike back. We can't just wait for them to finish us off," Sarah said to her team of soldiers who were gathered around the table in the dimly lit command center. Her voice was steady, but there was a fire in her eye. Captain John Harris, a veteran of the early battles, looked at her with concern. "Sarah, we don't have the strength anymore. The Zorans have taken everything from us. We don't have enough soldiers to mount a counterattack, let alone fight a full-scale war." Sarah looked at him, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She knew he was right. But there was something in her, a deep, gnawing sense that told her it wasn't over yet. The Zorans had underestimated humanity. She knew that deep inside, there was still something the Zorans couldn't account for. Something that they couldn't destroy. "What if we only need one last push?" Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. "Just one strike to show them that we're not finished." John shook his head, but the fire in Sarah's eyes made him pause. He had seen the fire before on the battlefield. He had seen it in every soldier who fought until the very end. "What do you have in mind?" The team gathered around, listening intently as Sarah laid out her plan. They would make one final stand not against the Zorans' army, but against their command center, the heart of their operations. The Zorans had a massive ship in orbit above Earth, a ship so powerful that it controlled everything. If they could destroy it, the Zorans would lose their grip on Earth, and maybe, just maybe, humanity could rise again. But the mission would be dangerous. The Zoran ship was well guarded, and they had little time before the Zorans launched their final assault on the last human resistance. If they failed, the entire planet would fall. The team was silent for a moment, but Sarah's words hung in the air like a spark waiting to ignite. "We don't have the luxury of fear anymore," she said. "If we die knowing we fought. And if we succeed, we give humanity a chance to rebuild." They didn't have much. A handful of soldiers, a few makeshift weapons, and a plan that seemed almost impossible. But for the first time in months, the team felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The night before the mission, Sarah stood alone in the control room, staring out at the stars. The Zoran ship was visible from the base, its dark silhouette floating high above the Earth. It was the enemy's fortress, its symbol of dominance. And tomorrow, they would try to bring it down. "We're not done yet," Sarah whispered to herself. "We will not be forgotten." The mission began at dawn. The small team of soldiers, armed with whatever weapons they could scrounge together, moved out. They were under no illusion about the dangers they faced. They knew they were outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed in every way. But they also knew that the Zorans had underestimated humanity's will to survive. As they made their way to the launch site, the world seemed eerily quiet. It was as if even the Earth itself was holding its breath. Sarah and her team made it to the launch pad, where a single shuttle waited for them. The journey to the Zoran ship would take hours, and the shuttle wasn't equipped for a prolonged battle. But there was no turning back now. They launched without hesitation, rocketing up into the sky. The Zoran ship loomed ahead, its massive form growing larger as they neared. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, but her mind remained focused. This was it. There would be no retreat, no second chances. As they approached the Zoran ship, they were met with heavy fire. Zoran defense systems locked onto their shuttle, but the team fought back with everything they had. The shuttle's hull rattled as the blasts struck, but they held on, determined to reach their target. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they breached the Zoran ship's outer defenses. Sarah and her team fought their way through the ship's corridors, planting explosives, setting traps, and taking down any Zoran soldiers they encountered. When they finally reached the core of the Zoran ship, Sarah planted the last explosive charge. She looked around at her team. "This is it. We've done everything we can." John nodded, his face grim. "We've done more than anyone thought possible." With a final push, Sarah and her team escaped the ship just as the explosion detonated. The Zoran ship exploded in a fiery burst, the shockwave reverberating across the planet. It was a symbol of humanity's defiance, a final stand that would be remembered forever. As the remnants of the ship burned in the atmosphere, the last of the Zoran forces retreated. Earth was free. Commander Sarah Knight looked out at the rising sun, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what they had lost. But in that moment, she felt a sense of peace. Humanity had fought, and humanity had won. The last stand had been made, and Earth would rise again.